accordingly. Are you ready?
But that's not me. I'm the Switchblade baby.
You, and especially you. Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. Goodbye. Write it down. You like writing things down.
I am your favorite podcaster's favorite podcast. I am
Omega, the Omega Luke Wrestling Podcast.
Hey guys, Omega Luke here, and welcome to a midweek special interview. Today I'm being joined by Jon Robinson, who not only has my middle and last name, but is the author for WWE's new book, Creating the Mania, a look and dive into a year between WrestleMania 33 to 34, and the build-up to WrestleMania from everyone's perspective, to creative, to the guys who booked the venues for Mania, and even the superstars themselves. I've read the book myself, and I can honestly say it's such an amazing and interesting read, and you cannot actually believe the goings-on and the preparation required for, creating the WrestleMania itself. So I have Jon here to talk about this book and the other books he has written for WWE, to explain a bit more about it, and I can honestly say the guy is brilliant. He has so many stories from backstage around the Attitude Era with some of the biggest superstar names from the world of wrestling, all the way through to writing about NXT and around the Performance Center. So sit back and enjoy this one, as it's a lot of fun, and any wrestling fan will thoroughly enjoy this fantastic chat with Jon as we talk Creating the Mania. Jon, how are you? Welcome, mate.
Oh, thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, everything's great.
Like I said, you're coming on to promote your new book. So it must be quite an exciting time for you.
Oh, man, yeah, it's awesome because, behind the scenes, what people might not realize is how long a book like this takes to create. So, the book's Creating the Mania. I did it in conjunction with WWE, but, the reality is behind the scenes, I was working on the book for, about a year. Because, the book is all about how WWE from, creative side, from a business side, from a talent side, puts on WrestleMania. So we kind of started, back at WrestleMania 33 and, started interviewing all the wrestlers, all the, the creative team, everything, in the build up to WrestleMania 34.
Yeah.
And, I think people, they see the book and they're like, oh, cool. I wonder how long it takes to, write 300 pages. Man, it takes a while.
Yeah, because from reading the book, not only does it take a while for you to prepare the book and write the book, but it seems like it takes WWE a long time to actually create WrestleMania from the book. Like, all the preparation that goes into picking a city and just things like that. The details which you wouldn't really think would be major, it turns out from a WWE point of view, is a massive deal.
Oh, yeah, especially from the business side, like you said, picking a city, for instance, all these different cities are coming in, the mayors, all these delegations are coming to WWE and pitching them because they know that, WWE is going to bring millions upon millions of dollars to their city, and it's going to, fill restaurants and hotels. So this has become like a major get for any, city who can get not only WrestleMania, but any of the WWE pay-per-views for that matter.
Yeah,
because they know the money that it generates. So yeah, they're looking ahead. They used to do it, oh, okay, yeah, we'll go there. That sounds cool. And that now it's almost like the Super Bowl where people are bidding, 3 years ahead of time, and they're coming in and they're like, okay, well, maybe you don't get WrestleMania, but we'll give you the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
And if you do well on the Royal Rumble, maybe you'll get a WrestleMania down the line. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff from a business perspective.
Yeah, there's some of that definitely surprised me. Definitely, I never realised that it was a case of like sort of the tables have turned now. Like, cities are actually going to WWE and pitch themselves rather than vice versa. But we're still hoping in the UK over here to have a WrestleMania one year. Maybe not so soon, but you never know in the future.
Yeah, they talk about that in the book because I asked them because, I know a lot of people would love that. And, I think with the network And, you've seen things like the recent one in Australia. I think they're kind of testing the waters to see how many people are going to watch throughout the world. How many people are going to watch in the U.S. if they have to wake up and watch it at, 8 in the morning or 2 in the morning or whenever it is.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens with the network. I think it opens a lot more doors.
Oh, definitely.
And like I said, maybe they'll test it out with a Royal Rumble or Survivor Series first, and then if it's successful, maybe WrestleMania will get there.
Yeah, I'll be happy with that, to be honest. So let's start about before you were sort of writing these books, because you have a bit of an unbelievable backstory, really, and I think it sort of like makes every wrestling fan extremely jealous. So, so obviously you grew up a wrestling fan anyway, and it was I read in the book that you were known for being backstage playing like video games against superstars, and including two of the biggest names probably of the Attitude Era, The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Is that right?
Yeah, man. So it's pretty crazy. Like, I grew up a wrestling fan ever since I was a little kid. I always loved it. And, the other things I always loved were like video games and writing.
Yeah.
And when I was in college, I got an internship at a magazine called Game Pro, which back in the day was like, say, the biggest video game magazine in the world.
Yeah.
And this was during the time when, WCW was, just beating WWE easily in the ratings.
Yeah.
And WWE was having problems. But the one thing WWE had was a cool video game coming out. So I pitched the magazine. I said, you know what? Let's do a cover story on the WWE video game. It looks like a lot of fun. I've got my hands on it. And even though I was an intern, they agreed to put WWE on the cover and let me write the article.
No way.
So, I call up WWE PR and I'm like, yeah, Game Pro magazine, and we want to put you guys on the cover and we want to do some wrestler interviews. And I'm like, all right, great. Who do you want to talk to? So being a fan, I was like, okay, I want to talk to, Mankind, Stone Cold, The Rock, Triple H, and China. And they were like, yeah, no problem.
Well, you just couldn't believe your luck.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I like show up to the arena in the Bay Area, and they're all sitting there backstage, and it's unbelievable. It's like there's they're all just sitting there waiting for me. The video game's set up. And I was like, what? This is crazy. So I got to spend a couple hours with all these guys, and I was playing video games against them and interviewing them for the magazine. And the magazine ended up being like one of the best-selling issues of Game Pro ever had.
No
and
way.
Stone Cold and The Rock were on the cover. So I was like, oh, that was like an awesome experience. Like no matter whatever happens in my writing career, like nothing's ever going to top that, right? But so a month later, I'm like, sitting at home or whatever, and my phone rings, and it's The Rock. And he's like, for Game Pro, I used to write under the name Johnny Ballgame. And he was like, Johnny Ballgame, it's The Rock. What are you doing? It's like, what is happening in my life? The Rock is calling me. and he's like, hey, we're coming back to the Bay Area. You want to hang out? I was like, yeah, of course.
No way. That is unbelievable.
So he hooks me up with tickets, and I go backstage, and it's like The Rock, D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, like the nation basically wanted to hang out and play video games with me. So I brought them a whole bunch of games, like some stuff that wasn't coming out, and we started playing. And from there, every time they came to the Bay Area, they would call me up, and we'd play video games. We'd play Madden. We'd play like Knockout Kings back then. We'd play, anything I get my hands on, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, the various WWE games. And then, what's funny is other people would start getting in the mix then, like Edge and Christian would be like, hey, you got NHL? So I start playing like hockey and Christian was big into this tennis game called Topspin.
Yeah, I remember that. That was big in the UK.
Yeah, so we play like Topspin. And then, we'd be playing the games, and other people would walk in and be like, oh, what are you guys doing? Oh, this looks cool. So I'd be backstage, and The Rock would be like, hey, you want to get something to eat? And he'd bring me to catering, and then he'd just like start introducing me to people. I was like, hey, this is my friend John, and here comes the Undertaker, and he'd be like, oh yeah, dead men don't play video games. And then
That is amazing. Like, when you're looking back on that now, does that actually still feel real? Because to me, that would just seem like a dream.
And as like a big time wrestling fan, like, yeah, it's so crazy. And so that pretty much led to, you know, a lot of like writing gigs where, you know, from GamePro, you know, I went to a magazine called Insight, and the first issue had The Rock on the cover, and then The Rock and D'Lo Brown had a video game column in the magazine. So I'd help them write it. And then, you know, I went to IGN, and we do interviews with WWE on IGN. Then from IGN, ESPN was reading what I was writing at IGN, and we're like, oh, we want to hire you. Come write for ESPN the magazine, ESPN.com. So I was actually the first person doing WWE interviews on ESPN.com, and I did like the you know, the power rankings, like long before they had a WWE section. That was me writing that. And that was unbelievably popular on ESPN. And so basically, you know, one year I was at WrestleMania, and I just happened to like get in a car with some people who worked at WWE, and the guy I sat next to, he's like, "Oh yeah, I run publishing. I do all the editing of the books." And I was like, "You're the guy I've been wanting to talk to for years."
Yeah.
So like, I basically pitched him on like why I should be writing books for them. And he was like, "Okay, let me get your card." And I didn't hear from him for like a year. And then out of the blue, I got a call, and they're like, "Yeah, Simon & Schuster wants you to, you know, do a book." And that was like a book on like road stories. That was my first WWE book. It was called Rumble Road, and that one sold really well. So then they're like, "Oh, let's do another book," and that led to like they're like, "Oh, we want to do a book on the Attitude Era," and you knew all the guys. And one of the things doing the Attitude Era book was they were like, "Oh, we can't reach out to a lot of the guys for interviews. You have to basically cold call them and try to get the interviews yourself."
Yeah.
So, you know, what's funny is I'm still really good friends with like D'Lo Brown, and, you know, I'm friends with like Mark Henry and stuff. So like I called D'Lo, and D'Lo would be like, "Oh, you know, let me call Ron Simmons for you." And Mark Henry would be like, "Oh, let me get you in touch with so-and-so." And you know, kind of went from there, and I was able to get a lot of the guys for that book.
That's brilliant.
And yeah, so it's pretty crazy, you know. Like then creating the Mania, I mean, I had probably the best access I've ever had for a book, because, you know, I had the creative team at my disposal. I was able to just go to the arena, and I sat with Roman Reigns for over an hour.
Yeah.
You know, I went and met with Braun Strowman. We were like the only two in like this empty arena, just sitting there, you know, chopping it up. And it really reminded me of like the old days when I'd go back. But, you know, what's funny is even with all the access that they granted me for creating the Mania, I still had way better access back in the day when I played video games with everyone.
Really? I suppose the security's gone up a lot more now.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's not anything like it. In the old days, I was able to walk like to like where they would pull up and park and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm here to see The Rock," and they'd be like, "Yeah, go ahead," you know.
Yeah. So when they like giving you access for this, is it a case of you have to work with I don't know, like a manager or a PR guy and sort of book in time for the superstars for the interviews, or is it a case of you literally the WWE creative just say, "Yeah, you know, come along throughout the year"? Because like you said, this is a year-long project that you've done, so it's not a case of you turned up one day and interviewed, you know, 10, 20 superstars. You've had to go many different days. Is it a case of it's on your schedule, or is it strictly on their schedule?
A little bit of both. You know, I'd be watching Raw, and I'd hear from the creative team like what their plans would be. So then I'd say, okay, they're going to do Jason Jordan versus Kurt Angle, so I need to talk to, you know, Jason Jordan and Kurt Angle. Yeah. And then Jason Jordan gets injured, and then so it's like, okay, scrap that plan. Now I need to talk to, you know, Ronda Rousey, because now it's Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey. You know, like, so I'd put in requests. You know, it's funny because they're like, "Who do you want to talk to?" at the beginning of the process, and I gave them, you know, a list of over, I don't know, 50 to 75 people, and I think they were a little overwhelmed. Like, they were like, "This is the most interviews we've ever granted for a book." And I was like, "Yeah, and, you know, it's still not enough." And I'm like, I was constantly like, "Okay, I need to talk to this person or that person," and you know, there were some that it just didn't work out. Like, I wanted to talk to John Cena, and because like he was filming a movie, and because the reality is, like, if you read the book with the Undertaker, the creative team had no idea if he was going to actually wrestle. Like,
No.
I asked the Road Dogg, I asked the head writer of Raw, and they were constantly like, "Oh, you know what? That's above my pay grade." And it's like, you're the head writer of Raw. How's that above your pay grade?
Well, only the Undertaker knows, mate. It's the Undertaker's game, really, isn't it? But that was like a case of, they did actually tease that sort of on TV for a very long time, didn't they?
They did, and I think there was a lot of truth to it.
Yeah.
And, people think, oh, it's a work. And, I think maybe Vince McMahon knew, but I think even Vince and Undertaker were going back and forth, like, is he going to be healthy enough? And there were, contingency plans. Same with Daniel Bryan. They didn't know till way late in the process that Daniel Bryan was going to be cleared. And they were actually going to, in the book, it talks about how, it could have been Shane McMahon and Dolph Ziggler versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, which would have changed things up a lot. Like, it would have been interesting, because then what would they have gone with Dolph and Shane, and would have that have carried on past WrestleMania? So then Dolph wouldn't have gone to Raw, maybe, but then Shane had gotten injured too. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that could have happened. Yeah, where maybe Dolph would have got screwed on and stuck on SmackDown, where instead he goes to Raw, and it really revitalized his career, when the Intercontinental Championship, and now the tag team champions with Drew. I love them as a team. Yes, and so it's interesting kind of how different stuff happened, and then there's repercussions up and down the card and into the future.
Yeah, because that was one of the main things when I've been reading the book that's like really caught my eye, like the way that the WWE superstars have to just change things at a drop of a hat. So I think it was Xavier Woods' interview that you did, and he was sort of saying, like, one match they were about to go out and so-and-so was going to win, and then an hour before the match the creative team changed it. So they worked out another ending of the match, and then 5 minutes later they changed it back again. Okay, so we'll go back to doing that again, and then literally within 10 seconds of going out to the ring, they were told, no, actually we're going to go with this guy. So they have to be adaptable and within the matches, and still have to, like, be prepared to change it, even in the ring as well, when they're already halfway through the match. The referees are mic'd up. They could be told, you're not going to win this match anymore, so-and-so is going to win, and they have to sort of change it on the fly. And that was one of the main things when reading the book, which quite astonished me, really, because WWE comes across as such like a massive company, which has, well, you'd think they'd have plans put in place months in advance, and things like that was a massive surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about New Day versus the Usos, which is like a big feud, and they can't make up their mind like who's gonna win. It's pretty crazy. And then another one is Jinder Mahal. He was talking about how he didn't believe he was gonna win the championship until he actually got the win, got the pin, and they raised his hand, and he was like, "Oh, they actually did it!"
He thought all the way through they were going to change their minds.
Yeah, he totally did. So it's not just like the fans who might not know, and sometimes even the creative team doesn't know, and Vince just pulls a fast one. They were saying they didn't know Ronda Rousey was going to come out at Royal Rumble until she showed up, and the creative team was backstage watching, and they had no idea she was there.
Oh, really?
And Vince knew, but the creative team was like, wait, what? We thought it was going to end at that point, and then all of a sudden Rousey comes out. So it's pretty incredible how close to the vest I think Vince plays it, and I think you also learn of how the creative team and the wrestlers themselves will come up with storylines, and it'll get to like a certain point, and then Vince could just be like, nah, never mind, let's change it, I want to do this. So at the end of the day, it's Vince's show, and I think that's what you learn most about this book, is that Vince has complete creative control.
Definitely. One of the things that caught my eye was at the end of the Braun Strowman chapter, where he's talking about his career and he's like really confident and predicting big things for himself in the future. Like he's adamant he's going to be a Universal Champion. He knows it. Do you have to, like, when you're interviewing these superstars, are you like sort of asking these questions for them to answer, or is it a case of you give them a subject to talk about and you sort of just like let them ramble on and go on whatever they want until they go off on these tangents where you're sort of like, oh, I do, this is juicy stuff? Is it a case of that, or is it the questions you ask?
Yeah, I'm pretty prepared and, come up with probably more questions than I could even fit in the amount of time.
Yeah, I suppose because you're a fan as well, so that's sort of like the other side of it as well, and you want to ask all these questions as well.
Yeah, so, what's great about Braun is that, I wasn't sure how much time I was going to get with him.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, I got, probably an hour or so where we were just hanging out and, sitting there, and he was really cool. And he was very open about everything. Like, he talked about the Andre the Giant Battle Royal and how he was pissed. He was supposed to win. And then, like, all of a sudden they're like, oh, Gronk is showing up. Sorry, Mojo's winning. Like, yeah. Where, he should have been in a match that year. And then it was kind of like, oh, we don't have a match, but we'll let you win the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. And then it's like, oh, yeah, now you're not even winning.
Yeah. Like we said, changing things at a drop of a hat again.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, last year, say, like him and against the bar, I was told by creative, like, that was a funny concept, like that could be cool, but they decided to not do it. And then all of a sudden I'm watching Raw and, Braun wins and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be Braun and a mystery partner against the bar. And it's like, oh, that's funny. Like, a week prior, they told me that wasn't going to happen. And, so yeah, it's, it's interesting. I think a lot of injuries kind of changed their mind on the card. Like they were going to do Seth versus Dean last year. And, that was locked in pretty early, but then Dean got injured. So it's kind of funny watching the current storyline play out this year. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh, is this the storyline they had last year that got yeah. So yeah, it's kind of interesting when you read the book and see like what they had thought of, and then what got scrapped, and then you start watching this year, and you're like, oh, that's funny. That's from the book.
yeah. I was thinking the same thing actually on the Seth Rollins bit actually. But is there something from the book? Because obviously I've read it, so I know how sort of addicted this book can be to read. Once you sort of get into a couple of chapters, you're sort of going through and you're plowing through these chapters because like you said, the information is just so, for a wrestling fan, you can't believe it. But is there sort of like something that you can tease from this book, or a story from this book that you can tell people listening to this podcast just enough so that it piques their interest without giving anything away, but to make them want to go and buy this book straight away?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting about the book is every chapter kind of focuses on a different superstar and their story and their kind of road to WrestleMania. Yeah. So like, what's cool about it is, I got even like Ricochet from NXT. The Usos are probably like that's one of my favorite chapters, and like the Usos and New Day kind of going back and forth talking about their rivalry. But there's focus on superstars that probably they have never gotten like a book about themselves, like solely. Like there hasn't been an Uso book, or there hasn't been a book on the Miz. And the Miz kind of goes into really like what happened on that Talking Smack with Daniel Bryan. Like he tells the true story of what happened, and how that infamous promo came about and why he was so pissed. And like he not only tells the true story, but gives Daniel Bryan a lot of props. You'll hear the true story about Daniel Bryan and how he was working to try to get cleared. You'll hear some interesting things from Sami Zayn about turning heel, and even like how close, Shane McMahon's elbow drop off Hell in a Cell came to wiping out, Kevin Owens and Sami and Shane. So you'll hear like just some behind the scenes stories that, I'm surprised that I was able to write, being that this is an official WWE book, but they wanted it to be, a real telling of these guys' stories and the road to WrestleMania, and it's the only place you'll find this.
Oh, definitely. It is very unique, I think. Like, you would never get this anywhere else, which I think is a massive selling point for your book. It's a behind the scenes thing which you would never get anywhere else.
Yeah, definitely. And I've heard from everyone from WWE to the wrestlers, the bar, Sheamus and Cesaro did an autograph signing of the book, which was awesome. And then Cesaro hit me up and was like, "Oh, the book is great," so it's cool to hear feedback from them, the guys themselves. Yeah.
What's your favorite backstage story then? Because obviously you may have had one recently, or you may have had one when you were around back in the Attitude Era. Do you have a favorite backstage story?
That's a good question. One thing that was funny is, the guys are very competitive when it comes to video games.
Yeah.
And, I remember playing The Rock at, I think it was Knockout Kings, and I was just killing him and just knocking him out, with different boxers and stuff, and be like, he's trying to be like Muhammad Ali, and I'm knocking him out with, scrub guys. And, he looked down, and I was using a gray controller and he was using a green controller, and he it was the one time he seriously looked mad, and he was like, "Oh, I see why you gave me the gimmick controller, and I'm sure my buttons aren't working. You set it up so I'm using the green controller all the time." And he actually he seemed like he was mad.
You actually thought you were tricking him and getting in that way. That is amazing.
So things like that are always funny. There's also a story where, backstage, everyone's playing Madden, and that was back when Mark Henry was, I think he was the European champion.
Yeah.
And they bet the belt on a game of Madden, The Rock and Mark Henry, and The Rock won. And Mark Henry went out on Raw, and he went out without his belt. And I think the announcers even said, "Oh, I wonder what he did with his belt." And because The Rock wouldn't give it to him until he won it back at a game of Madden. So Mark Henry had to go back and beat The Rock at Madden to get his belt back.
No way.
Yeah.
See, you think now things like that would never ever be able to happen with how they go now. That would just never happen.
No, but back then it's pretty funny that there's some Raw episode where Mark Henry didn't have his belt, and it's because he lost it for a little bit at a game of Madden.
That is brilliant. But Creating the Mania isn't actually the only book that you've done, like you said. One book that really caught my eye in particular, because I love NXT, and I love doing a review on NXT on a weekly basis, is the other book you've done, NXT: The Future Is Now. And I remember seeing the preview to this book online, and it spoke about Triple H, who I recently saw actually this weekend at NXT UK taping, being in a meeting discussing the development program altogether. And I can honestly say that I read the 2 paragraphs that was on the preview and instantly thought, "Fuck, I'm gonna have to read this book." It's one of those things. It was because it just ends right on a cliffhanger. You're like, "Oh no!" So it's one of those things. I just had to read it. But it must have been so fun writing about NXT with seeing how far the brand has come now and how successful it's been as well.
Oh, that was an amazing experience because I basically I pitched them I want to write a book on NXT, and they're like, "Oh, you know what? We'd love you to do a book on, the Performance Center and how we're kind of utilizing the different aspects of the Performance Center and the coaching staff to kind of build the next, superstars." And they're like, "Yeah, come out to Florida and come check out the Performance Center." I was like, "Oh, that's great." So my first step for writing the book was, going out to Orlando, go in the Performance Center, I walk in, they're like, "Yeah, come talk to William Regal and come talk to, Triple H." I could spend, I basically followed Triple H around for an entire day.
Yeah.
And was able to ask him whatever I wanted. And go and I'd watch the guys. They were training and working out, and see the weight room and where they cut promos, and where they have this crazy ability. They can call up any match in WWE history and kind of watch they want to learn from the masters.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I want to watch Ric Flair or Randy Savage or Ricky Steamboat, and okay, here's every match, and they're sitting there and just trying to soak it all in, and it was an incredible experience. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I'm waiting to do an interview with one guy, and it's like, oh, here comes Finn Balor. He's just hanging out eating lunch. Like, hey, what's going on? And then I got to go not only to a taping, but hang out backstage while they were practicing, and I got to see it was back when Finn Balor and Kevin Owens were feuding.
Yeah,
and they were trying to. There's going to be a spot where Kevin Owens was on like a ladder, and he was talking, and Finn was going to come out, and I think Finn was supposed to throw the ladder at Kevin Owens as he ran away, and they were practicing throwing the ladder. And for whatever reason, like every time Finn practiced his ladder throw, it like ended up where the crowd would be. So then Triple H was like, no, throw it like this. So he'd try again, it would bounce, go into the crowd section, and then like Triple H was just like, all right, we're not throwing the ladder.
Best not really.
So yeah, it was pretty cool to like see behind the scenes stuff like that, and see how it works out.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I cannot wait to start reading once I finish creating the Mania. So it's not only, one book that you have that's just really successful. What you also got a book about the Warrior, is that right, as well?
Yeah, so I wrote a biography on the Ultimate Warrior, and it ended up winning like the Benjamin Franklin Award for her best biography of 2016, which is it's pretty insane that like a book about a wrestler that WWE puts out ends up winning like a major award.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's awesome. That book is really cool because as you go through it, there's all kinds of like special things. Like there's a card of like the Ultimate Warrior's like wrestling license, and there's like the actual music sheet of his theme song, and there's a mask, and like as you flip through the book, there's collectible stuff that
wow.
that's in the book as well, and it's really is a special book.
Yeah, how did that one come about? Was it your pitch again, or is it something that WWE wanted you to do?
That one, WWE wanted me to do it, just knowing that I was a big like Ultimate Warrior fan, and I just interviewed him like before he died for Sports Illustrated.
Yeah,
I wrote a story, and they knew that like we got along, and unfortunately, I think he was going to do like a biography, and then he passed away. Yeah, so like. It was more like, okay, now I'm writing this story, but we had all these great quotes from him because, just through the interviews WWE had done from when he returned. And, I was able to, go out and talk to different other superstars about Ultimate Warrior and kind of put together. But, I still... I wonder what could have been if he was still alive, and I was able to kind of do the book alongside him as opposed to doing it after he passed away. Yeah,
but you still won an award for it, so
it must
be an amazing book. You must have done a great job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, I love that book, and it was great to hear from Dana Warrior. She wrote like an introduction, and Triple H I think wrote the foreword, and it was cool. It was a cool process.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think about the current product anyway at the minute, being a massive wrestling fan?
What do I think of the current product? Is it's interesting. There's parts of it I love, and there's parts of it I'm like, man, why does every pay-per-view have to be 6 hours long?
Yeah, I know the feeling of that one. Yeah,
I understand, but like, like even robbing 3 hours is like too much for me, right? Like, yeah, it's almost like there's too much wrestling going on, but that's like. Just as a wrestling fan, I don't know if that's like because I want to watch Raw, I want to watch SmackDown, I want to watch NXT, I want to watch 205 Live.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with I want to watch New Japan, I want to watch Bound for Glory.
Yeah. So you are a fan of other products other than WWE as well. That was one thing I was going to say to you.
Oh, for sure, yeah, because I've been a big like Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact, John Morrison fan for a long time, right? So. it's cool to see him blow up. So yeah, I didn't even mention, I mean, Lucha Underground is another one. There's guys in these other promotions that are incredible, Cage,
Brian
you
Cage,
know,
yeah.
yeah, I love that guy. And
He's sort of a guy you could see going to WWE, because that's a Vince McMahon guy there, right there, isn't it?
oh yeah, and for sure. There's just so much wrestling going on. But Dolph Ziggler's probably like my favorite guy, right? And I mentioned him earlier, so it's great to see like Dolph and Drew together, and like I guess they broke up last night, the Dogs of War, with Drew's big boot to to Braun.
Yeah.
But I love Braun. I really like the Shield. It's funny, I almost think like people hate on Roman Reigns so much that I almost think he's underrated, in my opinion, because like the guy actually puts on great matches, and
he's a phenomenal wrestler.
Yeah, he's working his ass off, and it's not his fault, like the spot that they put him in, and that they refuse to just, if they would just let him turn loose and be a heel, he would, it reminds me of like The Rock back in the day, right? Like
100%.
Rocky Maivia, everyone just booing him, and they just, let's turn him into The Rock. And I think Roman has that same quality where like he can smirk, and he would have been he could be the ultimate bad guy.
Oh yeah.
And especially the way he works, and his size, like there's great stories you could tell.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And their roster is amazing right now.
They almost have too much in the roster, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why, it'll be interesting to see what happens when they go to Fox and next year, and I guess SmackDown, is that going to be the number one show then? Because that's going to be on national TV, not on cable. Like for everybody on prime time.
Yeah, I
would assume you're going to have a lot of people on SmackDown. I really like AJ Styles. Always love Samoa Joe. I think I tend to like SmackDown better.
Yeah,
I think the writing's a little better, and the feuds. I mean, Becky's amazing. Charlotte's doing a good job. Like, even though they have them like the wrong way, what the crowd wants. But the story's still the same. Like, it's funny because people complain, but then it's like, but you can cheer or boo whoever you want, so it doesn't really matter. Like, and Becky, she's doing such an amazing. I'm glad to see her, get the chance to run with this.
Yeah, I completely agree. Finally, then, my last question for you: is there any future plans for another book that maybe you can share, or anything in the running for?
I'm always down to write more books, but I have nothing lined up right now. I actually just pitched WWE on a book concept that I thought was cool, so we'll see what they say. But nothing I can really talk about right now.
Yeah, watch this space then.
Hopefully, there'll be more wrestling books coming up. If not, I'm actually working on a novel as well. It's be like my first novel.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with wrestling, but we'll see what comes with that. If it should be a fun one though.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, John, for coming on. Can you let the guys know who listens where they can purchase these books?
Oh, you go on Amazon, you go to Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or you can actually go to WWE.com, or the WWE shop sells Creating the Mania and the NXT book. But yeah, I think Amazon, you can go back and, everything. You check out the Ultimate Warrior book, the Attitude Era, you can find them all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, John, for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. It was fun.
And maybe next time you have that book that you just pitched to WWE, you can come back on and we'll talk about that one as well.
All right, definitely, man.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate.
All right, thanks.
There we have it, guys. A massive thank you to John for coming on and sharing all his experiences that he has. And what an amazing guy. His stories, much like his book, had me pretty much engrossed into the crazy world of wrestling that we have all fell in love with. And by the sounds of it, hopefully it won't be the last time we speak to John on the podcast. I'd love to get him back on with this pitched idea that he's come to the WWE with. and hopefully it comes through and we can talk about whatever it is once it has. But honestly, guys, I would not promote anything on here that I didn't enjoy myself or feel worth it for you. But Creating the Mania is such an amazing read, and if you get yourself a copy, let me know. Maybe you're a massive NXT fan like myself, get yourself a copy of NXT The Future Is Now. All on Amazon, like he said. I literally cannot wait to start reading that one once I've finished Creating the Mania. But what a great job. And fair play to John. He's a huge wrestling fan and he's took his talents, blended it with his passion of wrestling, and now he's basically living the dream, getting to meet all these amazing superstars for all these great interviews and creating fantastic books. If you enjoyed this interview, let me know, as I'm planning on doing a lot more in the future, as there are many interesting people out there like John with amazing stories about wrestling. So make sure you're subscribed to not miss any of these episodes. Follow the Twitter page at Omega_Luke and the Facebook page Omega Luke Wrestling. Of course, if you haven't checked out Monday's episode of Andrade Cien Almas Part 3, make sure you do so. It's the end of an era, an end of 1 year run that I've done of fantasy booking, and it was amazing, if I do say so myself. And if you wish to support the podcast anymore, you can pledge the Patreon page and become a member of the Omega Club for exclusive content and merchandise. I'll be back on Friday for another NXT review with MAFF Math, so I'll catch you then. Bye bye.
The Omega Luke Wrestling Podcast, Fantasy Booking League 2018.
How about you arrange it so that Simon Muller, or whatever his name is, can be my first victim?
Going to have to keep him in line.
The experience that you've all been waiting for.
Where are these challenges, Mr. Omega?
Omega looks shredded, Kevin.
It's looking doom and gloom for WWE.
I want Edge. Like, give me Edge.
Seen Omega in fantastic shape before, but never anything like this.
I'm a big fan of Mason Adams, if that is his real name.
Math, or MAFF.
4 horsewomen against 4 horsewomen, that's quite obvious. But Shayna Baszler turn on Ronda Rousey.
I think if Math doesn't win, you'll actually cry.
Why is he ducking me?
And become the first ever Omega Luke Fantasy Booking League champions.
And I'm just ready for the others after I take the 2 points off this champ.
For the prize of the Undefeated Streak of 1 t-shirt.
And be the OLW World Champion. Oh yeah, it's time to get on board or get left behind.